Welcome to this week's episode of Finding Authentic Leadership. Once again, my name is Rob King with Eric Torgerson, Patrick Hall, in collaboration from Trace Green and Angela Gillum. We want to once again thank everybody for all the love and support we've got. I've gotten multiple text messages and DMs and all sorts of messages from folks supporting the channel and supporting us and what we're doing. And we just wanted to say thank you all for very much for all the support that we've gotten. This week, we want to talk about a topic that is that both transcends work life and personal life. And we're going to talk about conflict resolution and how to approach conflicts, whether they be personal, professional, whatever. And just talk to you about some tactics that we've used in the past to get over some conflicts, whether it be between us and a subordinate, us and a manager, or between other subordinates or other managers or other leaders in our industry. So we're looking forward to that. Eric, I know this was kind of one of the topics that was brought up. I wanted to see if you wanted to go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, actually, this was a suggestion from one of our viewers. We asked for feedback, and we got a lot of great topics and feedback, and some of them are harder topics than others. So we picked the low-hanging fruit, and we're gonna talk about conflict and dealing with difficult conversations, and just share, like we've done the last 3 times, share our experience in these situations. Um, I hate conflict. I don't, and I mean, I don't know anybody that really likes it, to be honest with you.
I love it.
Well, then you are a fighter. I am a flighter. You either fight or flight, and I run like hell. But you know, the thing that I always have to remember is patience, and then keep the emotion out of it, and which is so hard. And it doesn't matter if you're talking to your child or talking to an employee, and you're trying to talk to them about behaviors that you've seen that's driving a wrong driver performance. So to tell somebody that they're doing something maybe not in a way that you like, or you are trying to give suggestions on ways to perform better or do something better, or listen to your father better, or whatever it is. So what are you gonna say, Rob?
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm
I
agreeing.
um
I'm agreeing.
so there's 5 things that I keep in mind, that I've learned through my career to keep in mind. First of all, with anything, you got to build their trust. If you don't have their trust when you sit down and have a conversation with them, you've lost them right off the bat. And then consider speaking in layers. And what I mean by that is, talk about the conflict. What happened? What speak in real data, not you know what happened, how we feel about what happened. So, hey, you knocked over the glass of water. That's what happened. How do you feel about that? Well, that little Johnny, that sucks, and now we got to clean it up. And then how yeah, that one doesn't make any sense. So, but talk about it and come up with a plan together, and goals together. Is kind of how I deal with the layer conversation again. And then you got to make sure you listen. And then here's the hardest thing that I see people do, and I do it all the time. We don't stick to specifics. You always do that every time. Well, no, when instead of always. And then stay away from you have an attitude. Nobody has an attitude. It's behaviors that make you feel that they have an attitude, good or bad. And usually when people say you have an attitude, it's a bad attitude. Well, there's
Right.
good attitudes too. So, and then I'm being real brief because I want Rob and Patrick to weigh in on this conversation too.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I could talk for the whole time, and Rob's got like a buzzer on my butt. So, but well, okay, a shocker collar, yeah. But then at the end of the conversation, brainstorm together and come up with a plan together instead of telling or this is what I want, or because you're not going to get the buy-in. And we've talked about that in every episode is getting the buy-in and building relationships and there's no it all kind of plays a part into dealing with conflict. So that's my not so brief theory about having conversations that are not so nice or not so fun.
Right.
So Rob, what do you think?
I run from conflict like, I'm a marathon runner. I hate conflict too. I don't. I want everybody to be happy and hunky dory. And my take. So I had a mentor many years ago who was talking to me about having difficult conversations. You're not going to go in and surprise anybody with a difficult conversation. If somebody screws up, somebody hangs up on a customer, or my daughter takes Pepsi into her bedroom or whatever.
What's wrong with taking Pepsi in your bedroom?
It's against the rules in the King household. Gosh darn it.
Oh. As long as there's not like whiskey.
Oh, there is. There's not that. There's not that. She's not to that level yet. She's her daughter's she's her dad's daughter, just not quite to that level. But if somebody breaks the rule, they know they've broken the rule. And they know what you're coming to talk to them about. So they're already ready. They've got their fists up. They're ready to fight you. They're ready to argue. They're ready to tell you how you're wrong, they're right, and the rule doesn't make sense or whatever. The very first thing that you need to do is not tell them how wrong they are. You have to get behind their guard. You have to get them to lower their guard. Right? So you don't go into the conversation, you screwed up and this is how you screwed up. You go into the conversation and you use that layered approach. You talk about, hey, what's going on? What happened? Well, I had Pepsi in my room. Okay, so why is that? What is that allowed? Is that not? No, it's not allowed. Okay. Why? What are the possible reasons? And you build on those layers. But I'm not going in and I'm not sitting there saying, you did this, you did this, you did this, because then their guard is up and they're blocking. I have to bring that block and that guard and that wall down to actually reach that person. And I'll be honest with you, for me, it's one of the hardest things in the world to do, because I'm going in and I'll use my daughter as a perfect example. I know that she's wrong in what she's done. She's snuck food into her room, or she ate too many of she ate her sister's snack or whatever it is. And I'll sit there and I'll say, Layla, you did this, 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 and this. Or Jaden, you've done this, this, and this. And all they do is put their guard up, and I don't get any. But when I have actual conversations and their guards come down, we make tangible market improvement on their behaviors. And I think that's the key of it, is bringing it all back to behaviors, right? I mean, Pat, you agree? What are your thoughts?
I 100% agree. First off, all of your rules for your household suck. Number one.
Thank you,
I
Patrick.
mean, I think Eric and I are on the same level. Like Pepsi and food, man.
Just Pepsi.
Really?
So can you bring in
okay.
Coke?
Like
Can you bring in
what
Coca-Cola?
is it? What about
No.
Doritos? Cool Ranch
No food?
Doritos.
No
Coke
no
for
food,
Pepsi products.
No food
is
in
it?
your room.
Yeah, I think we need to go back to the root cause
Like,
of why you're having this conflict.
right. Let's talk about your behaviors and creating rules first.
Yeah.
For your household, okay?
What's the root cause of causing the conflict? The root cause is you're not letting Cheetos in the room. You let Cheetos in the room, then you don't have any conflict.
The root cause of the rule is finding Cheetos bags under heads and finding Coke cans.
So the
and
behavior is cleanliness then. So it becomes an
Yes.
issue of they just need to clean better then.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think
Right.
you need to figure out your conflict, and actually we can. That's another story.
there you go.
right?
Yeah, another.
Go to the root cause, and why are we in this room talking about conflict? Why are we here? And that's what I
Right.
said. Why are we here? So anyway, sorry, Patrick.
No, you're good. No, yeah, I 100% agree. It comes down to behaviors, and the approaches definitely are. You need to have that layered approach. You need to be able to invite the person into the conversation. But here is another specific thing that I would say about this is when we're thinking about conflict management, we also need to think about ways in which people think about conflict management and what they think may or may not be it as well. So we talk about how we're afraid of conflict, and I think for us now, we can all think of moments where we've had where someone has said, "I need to see you in my office now," and we go, "Shoot, what did I do?" Or whatever that may be, where all of a sudden it becomes about conflict management. I think another big part of this conversation we could discuss is feedback, right? When we're giving feedback and how often someone may think that is conflict. I had an employee just the other week talk to me about how they appreciate the way in which I talk to them about feedback because it's very much an approach of here's what you're doing great, here's what we know that we want to improve, and how we can make it not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but here's why we want to improve it, here's how we're going to do it, we're going to do it and we're practicing it, awesome, cool, great job. And how that same type of idea can then also be taken into conflict management. Honestly, one of my biggest tools when it comes to conflict, find something good to say about the other person.
Yeah.
Right? Because you disarm and you make them put down their dukes, because then all of a sudden what happens when someone compliments you? What do you want to do in return? You want to compliment them back. So it becomes oh shoot, I need to think of something nice about this person. Okay, now we are on the same level where we can then go, hey, drop that glass, you put it on the end of the desk. Let's make sure, let's use something else in the future. Let's get that cleaned up. Hey, it's all good. It's a glass of water. We're getting it cleaned up. No problem.
We're tying all this in together. I mean, I know this is our fourth time of getting together and chatting, but we're always talking about what are the main things are to make sure they're not on the defensive, take the dukes down, and make that connection matter. And I mean, so you're exactly right. I couldn't agree more. And you sparked another thing that I've seen so many new leaders do, and I probably still do this. We go into a conversation, there wasn't conflict, but because of the way I started the conversation and have the concept, I just put myself into conflict, and now they're pissed, and now I've just totally, because I'm telling them what to do, and I want to see these numbers, or I want to see this, and now they put that defensive wall up because, and now you've caused conflict. Now you're backtracking. Okay, now I got to start to do everything that you guys just said.
Right. Yeah. You're a manager. You're on the floor, retail floor. Let's say, your boss says, "Hey, we need to be pushing these clothes out the door. I need to see this many sold by X time." You tell your employee, "Hey, we need to have a meeting," and the employee kind of goes, what did I do? All of a sudden they're starting to put their defenses up, and then you bring them in and you're like, hey, we need to see these things. All of a sudden, because there is a disconnect there, because your approach of how you're looking at it, all of a sudden a conflict is ripe to be made, not because you want to have conflict or they want to have conflict, but because the ground is set for this thing where all of a sudden it makes it seem like this person isn't doing this thing that they should, where if you approach the conversation in a completely different fashion, hey, so this stock that we've had in the back for a while now, yeah, we really need to make sure that we're getting this sold. So you do a great job at marketing some of these other items as people are kind of thinking about these other things. Is there a way you can include that? How many do you think we can get, and how can we encourage other? All of a sudden, it's a conversation where that approach that a lot of new leaders are thinking about is, okay, shoot, I got to get this number done. I got to get this out the door. We
Right.
got to do it. Okay, hey, I need to see you right away. Hey, so we got to get X number of things done. All of a sudden becomes a different situation.
Well, and I think the thing that we're all, we're talking around, but the thing that I think we're kind of missing a little bit is your mindset going in. So I've had some conversations that I've gone into that are like, this is easy peasy conversation, that turned into hour and a half long conversations about why I one way or another and why I don't like to, whatever. But then I've also had conversations where, and I had an employee, I love them to death. They were a great employee. They busted their tail. They tried to do everything they could. They just couldn't quite hack it. And I dreaded every time I had to talk to this person, and I just didn't want to. I didn't want to crush their spirits, and I didn't want to crush their desire. And I'd go into these conversations, and I'd hype myself up for an hour before I'd have my one-on-one with them. And I'd go in, and the first thing they said was, "I know I'm not cutting the mustard. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I'm making the efforts on. This is what I'm trying." And I I was disarmed at that point. Like, I went in ready for a fight, and they didn't have anything to fight me with. They knew exactly what was going on. They knew where they were at, because I had had these conversations, and we'd built a relationship, and eventually, I wish I could say that this person ended up being one of my best employees. No, eventually this person ended up putting in their 2-week notice and saying, you know what, this is not a job for me, and I need to leave. Most of the time that's a failure, right? If people leave you, that's a failure. This instance was a success, because they figured out that this was not the right spot for them. I figured out that this was not the right spot for them, and I was able to go in and replace them with somebody who was more apt to the job. So you also have to look at how you approach these conversations, right? Are you going in ready for a fight, or are you going in with facts, data, and targeted tangible behavior that can change and that will change to improve the current situation? Those are key aspects that you have to have when you approach a potential conflict.
100% agree. And
Absolutely.
then something that you don't do with your daughters is stay away from trigger words. I hate trigger words. Like, start the sentence with you. You need to not have Pepsi in your room. Well, she's going to look back at me. I don't need to do shit.
You met Layla, haven't you?
Yeah. Kind of, sort of, but
Right.
right there. I mean, it's so quick to put. They put that defensive wall up so quick when you use trigger words, and need, never, especially with children and employees, is like, you need to do this. It's so much simpler. Just cut the word out. Hey, can I ask a favor? Can you do this for me? Or you need to do this, or you
Right.
you never do this on time, or you need not to eat Cheetos in your
Doritos.
Doritos, Cheetos, whatever.
No, they're completely different shapes.
Okay. I still think you need to talk about the root cause.
Cheetos are worse.
So can they eat in your car?
No. Well, kind of.
They can eat in the car, but they can't eat in the room.
Well, so it's a matter of
causing your own conflict.
No, the behavior is the fundamental behavior is deceptiveness when it comes to food and just general deceptiveness.
So you're teaching them to be smarter about how deceptive they are then.
It has nothing to do with the food. It has everything to do with the rule, and they don't like the rule.
Right.
They need to be smarter about hiding it.
She's
call me.
Yeah.
I want to
give you a call. Yeah,
I want to take over this right now because I want to say something about all of this that is an important lesson for every leader, especially if you're new. Know when you're wrong and know when a rule know when a rule doesn't make sense, that maybe it shouldn't be a rule, or that you need to target the rule in a way where it makes sense for that person, and make sure that it's something that then they understand the why of how to follow. One of my biggest things that I've learned is, and Rob especially knows this about me, if I don't know why I'm doing something, I'm doing it at 85%. If I know the why of why I'm doing something, it's 110. Because if I understand the intent of something, then it makes much more sense. If I see a rule that's like, don't bring a glass of water in, or if I see a rule that doesn't fundamentally make any sense to me and seems to not have a real world reason as to why, then it's gonna be tough to follow the rules intent, especially me being someone who has a political science degree. Laws are supposed to be written with an original intent in design, so that then they are, when they need to be enforced, it's enforced in a specific way around the intent, right? Don't make rules to make rules because something bugs you. Make sure that you as a leader understand when you need to have a conversation around the behavior, and then if you're seeing multiple behaviors that are negative or that cause a problem, then explain the rule that points specifically to that behavior. So if there is an issue where kids are not cleaning up after they're, clearly, bringing in food and drinks and everything else, and you're like, hey, look, we've had a million conversations around the fact that you're not cleaning this up when you need to clean it up. We're getting ants. Things are sticky all of a sudden because there's soda and something spilled and whatever else. Hey, guess what does that mean? That means can't have food and drink in your room because you're showing that that's not responsible behavior. So there's the why for you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's exactly, and that's why our rule exists, is we had ants. Like, okay.
But you're making a rule. You're making up a rule because they didn't. That's just the easy way out.
Well, I understand. You target the behavior initially. I don't think.
Did you do that?
Of course.
Knowing his children. I'll give it to him.
Yeah.
But knowing him, no, he just went right to
there's also that as a possibility.
He walks into the room. He walks in the room, saw Pepsi cans, and instead of making,
I'm shipping them to you. I'm shipping them to Grandpa. Grandpa is gonna get to deal with them for a little while. But so I think we're touching on a lot of really good stuff when you have a conflict. The other thing I want to talk about when it comes to conflict management is when somebody else has a conflict. That's huge, and I think
and you're a mediator.
Yeah,
because
I think
that happens a lot
sucks.
as a leader. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that takes more. So when I was down in Arizona, I think more of my time was spent mediating and dealing with other interpersonal conflicts than it was doing anything else. And that I think is always difficult because you can't, you know, somebody's going to come to me and say, we'll say the girls. I'll use the kids again as an example. Layla's going to come to me and say, Jaden didn't let me listen to her music on the plane. And, it wasn't fair because I didn't have a cell phone and I couldn't listen to anything. And now I've got a conflict between the girls.
So you take away the cell phone. That's how you solved it, right?
Well, I took Layla's cell phone away a long time ago. So I caused the conflict.
See, that's my point. That's my
right?
point.
Yeah, fair. But so Layla's not wrong in thinking that Jaden should be sharing of her cell phone. Jaden is not wrong in thinking that it's her cell phone. She should listen to the music by herself. And
well, Layla shouldn't have got her phone
books.
taken away.
Well, there's that.
Let's go back to the root cause.
Yeah, no, I agree. But there's still an interpersonal conflict that you have to work through. And you have to figure out how to basically do everything we just talked about and get them to understand that they need to put their dukes down and they need to get ready to have an actual conversation. So that's another step of conflict management that I think a lot of times gets overlooked.
Oh, yeah.
And is probably one of the biggest things that a leader has to deal with is interpersonal conflicts on the team or as leaders.
And it's more difficult. I agree with you, Rob. It's more difficult than because you have control over your behavior and how you react and how you come defensive. If you're having a conflict with somebody or they're having conflict with you, 100%. But yes, I agree. Trying to mediate two people's conflict is harder. Sorry, Patrick.
You're good. Let me ask you this: in a conflict happens with employees. Let's say two of your employees or your employee and another employee from another team. When
little
do
Johnny.
you little Johnny, little Susie? When do you involve HR? Based on your experiences, what level do you involve HR?
It's a good question.
That's a very good question because there are times when it's immediate.
Right.
You're dealing with, threats, remarks of a sexual nature, remarks of a racist nature, remarks of, there are the red flags that are.
Yeah, there's the major red flags,
red
right?
Fireworks going off, everything's in. And then there are other times when it's, I always include HR. I always FYI them.
Yeah, sometimes you can't. I mean, sometimes it's like right away, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's immediate. But even if I have a small conflict, and I say small's a relative word, right? I see it as a small conflict because I deal with hundreds of them in a weekly basis. But if I have an agent that comes to me and says that they have a problem with their supervisor, they think their supervisor doesn't like them, blah, blah, blah. And they go on and have several different things that they say to me. I'll listen to them and I'll say, okay, let's work on figuring out this conflict. And I'll FYI HR. Hey, HR, FYI, this agent came to me, had these concerns. This is what my plan is to address it. And I'll send it off. Most of the time, HR comes back. All right, great plan. Let me know if you need help. Sometimes they come back, let me handle it. And they'll jump in. But I always FYI them. But it's a matter of, again, there are red flag and there are 911 situations that you need to get it over to HR right away. But the majority of the time, most of the conflicts that I tend to deal with and run across are problems with perception. And they're problems with, you know, well, Eric doesn't like me because of X, Y, and Z. Okay. Well, I know Eric. I work with Eric a lot.
That's
and I
true.
know Eric doesn't like me because of X,
I
Y,
don't
and
like
Z.
you. Yeah.
Right. But a lot of times, most of the conflicts, most of the stuff that gets brought to me or that I've dealt with in the past can almost always be handled with a simple conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just triggered, and we've talked about having perception as a whole topic
Mm-hmm.
and how to deal with the perception. You have
Like
control.
a 3-part topic for sure.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we could talk a long time on perception, but you're exactly right, Rob. I would say 85% of the conflicts that you are jumping into and trying to help mediate are perception. Little Johnny looked at me wrong. All right.
That is, I will say, that is one of the real nice things about working remote is when you can
Yeah.
screenshot or just forward an email and to your point, Rob, CC HR and just be like, just so you're aware.
Yeah. FYI.
And in my experience too, it's been when they say, no, I'm going to handle this, is usually when it's like, oh, there's been 3 or 4 maybe other people who were like, yeah, my supervisor is blah blah blah, or yeah, this person keeps doing this with other people, so we need to step in and try to kind of intervene. But yeah,
you guys are better. You guys are better than I am. That's, and I'm saying shame on me, but I'm not as good as that than you are, Rob, about including HR, because I have this mentality that I just can solve everything, and I want to try, and it's got me in trouble sometimes because now I'm down this rabbit hole, and I should have included HR, give them a heads up, FYI, and now it's a big. I didn't do a very good job of solving the conflict.
It's definitely something where it comes back to, I think, something we've touched on before, where the interdepartment relationships and stuff.
Yeah.
You always got to have an IT guy. You always got to have an HR person. You always got to have someone that you can just be like, hey, just so you're aware, this thing is happening, or hey, we're seeing this issue pop up, whatever.
It goes back. I mean, I think we could almost change our name to make every connection matter instead of finding authentic leadership, because I mean, we always go back to build relationships with everybody. If you have that relationship with HR, then it's going to be easy. Even if you do pull an Eric and pull him in late, you have that relationship. Same thing, IT. Have that relationship with IT, because you need IT, and if you piss them off, you're in trouble. Everything. I mean, the first thing I always do is I go introduce myself to the receptionist and to the janitorial company, and because for some reason receptionists, they're going to call you if they see an issue or somebody comes to the door and they need you, and you always need to be nice to the janitor so they pick up the garbage and if there's something wrong. So yeah, build those relationships. I know but that's a prequel to help you with conflict.
Well, and it teaches you and it shows you having that authentic connection with HR helps you to, do I have to FYI you? And when do you want to be involved? Right? I mean, we on our last project, we had such a strong connection with our HR team that most everything that they would bring up to us was, hey, we got this complaint. It's not valid. We know it's not valid. We're telling you we got this complaint. We're going to go ahead and handle it. Okay, cool. Thanks. And then when we had big things, I'd be able to send them a message saying, hey, need your help. We've got a major issue. Please come and join me in this meeting. And they would join me in the meeting. And we would be fine. but it's a matter of, like Eric said, making that connection and being authentic and being who you are, right? In showing that authenticity and having a real connection, not just with your HR partners, but with the people that you're trying to mentor. Because most of the time, they're going to come to you either because you have positional authority or because they respect you. Hopefully, it's the
Hopefully,
latter.
because yes,
Hopefully, it's because they respect you.
Yeah, and that's our whole message, right? Is build that relationship with anybody, so they do respect you. So it makes dealing with conflict or dealing with whatever I'm trying to think, dealing with any kind of conversation a lot easier because you've built that relationship.
There's also
go ahead, Pat. Sorry.
No, you're good. Really quick. So a part of the conversation around being your authentic self, that you said, Rob, really brought me to someone that I think we worked with, that I didn't work well with at all. And I respected this person. It's great guy. Was good at what he did. Personality wise, he and I did not mesh at all. You know, and I think a part of conflict management that we also need to recognize is there's going to be times where two people, hey, just don't work well together. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Let's recognize that and then figure out how we can make sure that those two people can work around each other in a way where it doesn't cause problems if that's the case, and just make sure that things work out well, and that they're able to be successful in the ways they need to be successful.
That's a great point, Patrick, that conflict doesn't have to be a conversation or a one situation, or it can be a relationship that you have, and and you have to have the perception of what's going on and understand that.
Yeah, no, and Patrick, that's a really good point, is understanding when a conflict is resolvable or when a conflict is fundamental. Because I think I know the situation that you're talking about, and it came down to a point where you needed an intermediary, right? There was always going to be an intermediary to interpret the message, relay the message in the different aspects so that both parties are involved. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. There are people out there who are process oriented, who have to document everything from step 1 to step 777. I am not that way. I am going to say, let's go do it. People who are process oriented do not tend to like me. I do not tend to like people who are process oriented. Most of the time, not most of the time, a lot of the time, I need somebody, or I need myself to be my own intermediary to interpret the message, modify it to ways I can fathom it, see why it makes sense or doesn't make sense, and then use them the other way. So I think a seldom used tool is using that intermediary or using somebody to go in between. And I think that it's not used enough because people think that they've failed at conflict management, when in fact that's how they need to manage conflict, right? So I'm on anxiety medications. And for the longest time, I fought with going on anxiety medications because I thought that meant I lost my battle with anxiety. When in fact, no, it's the exact opposite. The anxiety medications that I'm now on and taking have helped me to overcome it. Sometimes you need that second or that third party individual to run interference between both of you. Again, I'll take it back to my kids too. More often than not, my conflict management with my kids is knock it off, Layla. That was rude. Jaden, that was rude. Rephrase it. And I'm going back and forth, and I'm having them change how they're approaching their sibling. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. But you know, it's okay to need a third party. It's okay to reach outside of your immediate sphere to get somebody to help you overcome a communication gap that's a fundamental gap that's never going to get closed. And I think that's seldom used.
It's okay to need help, to ask for help, and to get help. And
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect message right
Yeah.
there. You know,
That's hard for a lot of people.
hmm and especially when I think we talked about this first episode. You know, I had a mentor when I first became a supervisor, and that was one of the greatest things I got, to really help me observe someone else's best practices and such. When you're beginning in a new role as a leader, um, sometimes you're thrown into it with little to no training. Sometimes you get some training, and then they expect you to be able to do everything. It's okay to ask for help, especially from the people who are doing the best, try to do what you can to observe them and watch them. Um, that's going to be the best way for you to understand how you can be successful in your role.
But don't expect to do that immediately.
No.
Because so I screwed myself up a long time ago. Because I had a really
Still
great
going.
Yes. I had a really great mentor. And I've been fortunate enough to have a really great mentor for my entire career. And I started leading, and I was like, this person is the absolute best. I'm going to be like this person. But I wasn't ready to be like that person. I hadn't matured. I hadn't grown in my role enough. Now I'm getting a little bit closer, and I'm starting to find myself saying and doing the things just naturally that this person would have done at my time and tenure. So don't be afraid to screw up, and you're gonna screw up.
It's the first waffle.
It's the first waffle.
Your waffles get better as you make the roll. I know Patrick wants pancakes, but I've always heard it's our first waffle. But I mean, you're exactly right, Rob. I mean, we've talked about it on every episode, is like, look at how you handle a situation and grow from that situation. That's exactly what you're saying. Look at somebody as your mentor, but it doesn't mean that you're going to snap your fingers and be them.
Right.
This is a process. Life is a
Yes.
process, and it's a bunch of phases and a bunch of stages, and you can't skip any phases. You can maybe go to different phases. I go to one phase next. Rob, you go to a different phase. I'm going to have to go to your phase sometime, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same order that you did. So this is a
Right.
process.
Yep, absolutely. I think we're getting close to our hour mark. So, any final thoughts, Patrick or Eric?
No, I mean, I hope that we triggered something with, how to have a conversation, maybe not even conflict, but, have a conversation, to not cause conflict. And then also, I'm glad that we spoke about, because I think it's harder to be in the middle and be the mediator. So that could almost be another topic, and give some more. I don't know if we did a real good job of the how on that one, but we could do that again later.
I think I can say the how, and the final thought that I had is I heard someone say this, and I thought it was a really good thing. Especially with conflict management, I think it relates to seek to understand.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna find a lot of information when you're asking questions, whether you're a part of the conflict, whether you're the intermediary of the conflict. Seek to understand. And I truly believe that the people who are in their mind who are going to be able to help best resolve the conflict are going to realize you're seeking to understand to find the best solution. So they're going to then want to be a part of that solution. And you'll find the best path through if you seek to understand. So
Ask questions for understanding. I mean, that was a good man that said that, Patrick.
yeah, he's a great little man.
He wasn't very tall. He wasn't very tall.
Still isn't.
My God. No, still isn't. I don't know. You might have bought some stilts. Who knows?
I just pump up my chair.
There you go. Pump up your chair. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us for the last hour and listening to us ramble. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or suggestions for a future show, please email us at authenticleadershippod@gmail.com or connect with us on our Facebook or LinkedIn. You could also message us on YouTube. We basically pick an avenue. We'll see it. We appreciate it. And just again, going into this next week, remember, make every connection matter. So thank you all. We'll see you again.
Thanks for listening, guys.